The National Desk, America's News Now.
Breaking now, emergency underway near the from the Coast Guard. Plus, we're tracking a deadly storm system slammed the south. How many million? And where people are dealing with life-threatening heat in the aftermath.
This is hard.
Speaking publicly after his meeting with China's president, what he says is the key to repairing the strained relationship. And tonight, our investigative team taking a deep dive into dynamic, how to beat the algorithms that could be continuing. News begin of missing some 5.
The National Desk, America's News Now.
Breaking now, an urgent search for missing tourists underway near the Titanic's wreckage. The late update from the Coast Guard on why the rescue effort is so complex. Plus, we're tracking a deadly storm system slamming the south, how many millions are at risk, and where people are dealing with life-threatening heat in the aftermath.
But progress is hard.
The Secretary of State speaking publicly after his meeting with China's president, what he says is key to repairing the strained relationship. And tonight, our investigative team taking a deep dive into dynamic pricing, how to beat the algorithms that could be costing you thousands of dollars. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Eugene Ramirez, and we begin with breaking news off the top here. The Coast Guard just sharing an update on that search for a missing submarine with 5 people on board. That group planning to explore the wreckage of the Titanic when contact cut off roughly 2 hours into their dive of 13,000 feet. The Coast Guard has deployed half a dozen planes and is now asking commercial vehicles to be out on the lookout for the submarine. It's designed to float to the surface in case of an emergency. The Coast Guard says locating it is the top priority right now. Coast Guard officials say the remote area makes this search extremely complicated. This is happening about 900 miles off the coast of Cape Cod. That submarine has between 70 and 96 hours of oxygen available. And now more search teams are ready to deploy as we get closer and closer to that time frame. We'll keep you updated as we get any new information. Developing now, multiple tornadoes reported in Florida today. You're looking at a brand new video here showing one touching down. This is in Destin, the Florida Panhandle. Thankfully, no injuries reported, but damage assessment is currently underway. That tornado, one of 24 reported all across the U.S. in just the last 48 hours. And we've just learned a twister in Mississippi killed 1 person overnight. Dozens more were injured. Right now, state emergency teams still trying to access the areas with the worst damage. They've had to use some drones as part of their search and rescue operations there, since so many roads are blocked by fallen trees and some power lines, too. As many as 43 million people are at risk of seeing severe storms again today. And we're going to show you some radar here. The Storm Prediction Center says tornadoes, damaging wind gusts, and large hail are all possible. These storms have already knocked out electricity to more than 500,000 people, and that's quickly becoming a life-threatening issue in states like Louisiana and Texas. Both states under an excessive heat warning. It could feel as hot as 123 degrees in parts of South Texas. And both the outages as well as the impending power demand are bringing the focus back to the state's electrical grid. The National Desk, Sandra Elnashar, has this story.
Another summer of sweltering conditions threatening to push some of the nation's electric grids to the brink. Parts of Texas forecasted to see temperatures of 100 degrees or higher all week. As people try to stay cool,
it's like really hot, so I don't know. I'm drinking a lot of water lately.
ERCOT, the state's power operator, telling customers to keep an eye on grid conditions. Texas's grid isn't the only one under strain. In a report out this year, the Department of Energy identifies need across the country for upgraded transmission systems, which carry energy from one point to another. About 70% of them are more than 25 years old. The Department of Energy report says the grid regions with the greatest need for upgrades are Texas, Mountain, Southeast, Midwest, and the Plains. Extreme heat is listed as a top threat to the reliability and resiliency of the nation's power grids. Hurricanes and wildfires also taking a toll. Climate change driving more extreme weather events is why many argue for the need to transition to renewable energies like solar and wind. And under President Biden, Congress has passed billions of dollars to do that, in part by modernizing grids.
We need a transition period to be able to build up that solar supply in the United States. And it is happening.
The North American Electric Reliability Corporation says rapid development of renewables is making a positive difference this year. But, along with critics of a rapid transition to clean energy, warns against moving away from old generators at the same pace.
We are retiring dispatchable generating resources at a pace and in an amount that is far too fast and far too great, and it is threatening our ability to keep the lights on.
A complicated network in flux and tested by rising demand and extreme weather. In Washington, I'm Sandra Elnashar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says direct communication with China is key to stabilizing relations. This after meeting with China's President Xi Jinping today on the Secretary's second and final day there in Beijing. Blinken says he and the Chinese leader discussed a wide range of issues, including North Korea, as well as Taiwan and the war in Ukraine.
In terms of those objectives that we set for this trip, establishing open communications channels, directly raising issues of concern, exploring cooperation in places where it's in our mutual interest to do so. We did all of that on this trip, but progress is hard.
Blinken says China's foreign minister agreed to visit Washington at a suitable time. There's growing controversy right now over the content of New York City's new publicly funded vending machines. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has the details from Washington.
You won't find Doritos or Pepsi in Brooklyn's latest vending machine. Instead, Narcan and crack pipes.
The point of it is we all know people who would be alive today if a machine like this had existed.
This machine, one of 4 the city's health department plans to install.
This also normalizes that we in treatment know that people are using, and so we're okay with that. You can use safely, get to us, and then get treatment so that you can turn your life around, and that's the goal.
The machine reportedly ran out of crack pipes in the first 24 hours. This program costing taxpayers about $750,000. Critics like former NYPD Commissioner Bill Bratton sees this as society surrendering in the war on drugs.
Instead of trying to get people away from drugs, we have policies now. We have vending machines to encourage them to stay on drugs.
Narcan vending machines are a growing trend. Pennsylvania, Texas, and Michigan already have them. New York, however, appears to be the first to distribute free crack pipes through vending machines. Former drug dealer and addict Richie Wynn has dedicated his life to helping others achieve sobriety. He says there's no such thing as safe consumption.
Have somebody safely inject fentanyl, which is an oxymoron, because there's no way to safely inject a street drug that is being manufactured in another country that has no regulation.
Law enforcement expert Jason Johnson pointing out the negative impacts of drugs doesn't stop at the user.
And there's also all the collateral effects, homelessness, and all of the things that come with it, the appearance of disorder, increase in thefts and shoplifting. It has sort of a ripple effect that I don't think is widely appreciated.
And these vending machines are part of a pilot program. If they're deemed successful, more will then be rolled out.
Hey, Kayla, so now there's similar programs right now in Los Angeles that distribute glass pipes to drug users, but in person, not through these vending machines. What's the argument that this reduces harm?
So, Eugene, there are a few reasons. First, these advocates say pipes are a safer way to ingest drugs compared with, say, needles. And by giving away the pipes, they hope to cut down on HIV and hepatitis C transmissions via dirty needles. Now, second, they argue that the giveaways will help build trust with users who might be too ashamed to seek out treatment otherwise. They hope that building a bond will help these people eventually come to them to get off drugs further down the road. Now, as we heard in the report, though, Eugene, plenty of people do disagree with this approach.
That's right. Kayla Gaskins reporting in Washington. Thank you. People across the country are celebrating Juneteenth today. Juneteenth is the newest U.S. federal holiday observed on June 19th. It marks the day in 1865, that the last enslaved people in the U.S. learned that they were free after the end of the Civil War. Juneteenth became a federally recognized holiday in 2021. Coming up here on the National Desk, police in New York City asking for help to find the suspect in a string of knife attacks. What we know about the crime so far. And the National Hurricane Center now says we may see a rare June hurricane, where the system is strengthening right now and where forecasters believe it's headed. New tonight, a federal judge approved a new motion in the classified documents case against former President Donald Trump. It says he is not allowed to disclose sensitive information during the case. The prosecution requested the order ahead of the discovery process, when they'll have to show the defense the evidence that they've collected in the case so far. President Biden ramping up his 2024 re-election efforts in California today. He kicked off the trip with the Bay Area with an event in Palo Alto this afternoon. He'll be holding several election fundraisers in the area this week. The Biden campaign has over 20 fundraisers scheduled just for the back half of June. Meantime, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis also in Northern California today. He held a private roundtable breakfast in Sacramento this morning, raising money for his 2024 campaign. Those tickets reportedly costing $3,300 each. President Biden announced new federal funding for climate projects today during his event at a California nature preserve. Over $600 million from the Inflation Reduction Act will go towards fighting climate change in coastal communities.
But I want to emphasize again, we're taking the most aggressive climate action ever. It's focused on mitigation, which means historic investments in developing clean energy by reducing dependence on fossil fuel, and resilience, which means communities can better withstand the impacts of climate change and extreme weather.
Defense arguments began today in the youth climate trial in Montana. The plaintiffs, ages 5 to 22, sued the state in 2020, saying that they've been harmed by climate change and that the state of Montana is obligated to protect them from it. Officials there in the state say that a win by the plaintiffs would not change permitting practices there. Police are searching for a man who slashed 2 women yesterday in a New York City subway station and a third woman a few minutes later on a train. The women were all taken to the hospital with cuts on their legs. The suspect is described as 5'8" with short black hair, brown eyes, and weighing about 220 pounds. You see him there on the right. He was last seen wearing a white shirt, blue pants, black shoes, and a black and red baseball hat. If you have any information, people should call the NYPD's Crime Stoppers hotline. Right now, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation testing some white powder sent in letters to about 100 state lawmakers and elected officials. Now, so far, they have not found anything like bacteria or viruses that can make people sick. One state representative shared a copy of that letter he received, and it ends with sentences in several languages. The FBI is also helping with this case. Developing now, the FAA is investigating another runway close call, this one at Boston Logan International, as we give you a live look here over the city of Boston today. The FAA said a United plane clipped the tail of a Delta jet while it was taxiing, and no one was hurt, but all those passengers on both flights had to get off and then rebook. That happening as air travel industry braces for the next wave of summer travel surge. The TSA screening 2.7 million people per day ahead of the Juneteenth and Father's Day weekend. And a survey from Vacation finds that 60% of Americans are planning a trip for the 4th of July. But there's a chance travel will cost you more, not only because of inflation, but also because you're in the U.S. Spotlight on America's Lisa Fletcher explains how your location affects what you pay and how you can outsmart those algorithms.
You think you're getting the best vacation deal, comparing prices as you change up travel sites. But what you're not changing up is where you are when you book your trip.
Richer countries, we see that they tend to often overpay for same offerings elsewhere.
It's called dynamic pricing. Companies maximize profits by changing the price depending on who's buying when and from where.
If you're looking to book a flight and then you recheck that same flight, a few hours later, the price will be different.
Gerald Kasoulis is with NordVPN. They recently commissioned a study using a VPN, a common security tool that encrypts data and hides your IP address, to trick travel sites into thinking they were in countries other than the U.S. when booking cars and hotels.
We were shocked by the results.
Using a server in Mexico to access Hotels.com saved a whopping $57,000 on this luxury Los Cabos hotel that cost 68% more using a U.S. server. Using an Italian server to access Booking.com, they saved $543 on a family vacation to Venice, and often were able to pick up rental cars for a third less than what identical sites were offering when they detected a U.S. server.
Those algorithms are being used against us to potentially trick us into paying more than we should be paying. I think it's time that we take control into our own hands as well and start using those algorithms to our own advantage.
We put it to the test, comparing identical car rentals and hotel stays for a family of 4 using my U.S. IP address and then using a VPN to make the websites think I was in another country.
There we go.
Most of the time, the prices were comparable, but occasionally, oh wow, there were some real money-saving opportunities. London's Royal Garden Hotel was $62.86 for a family of 4 when I used my U.S. IP address, but switched to one in the U.K., and I saved more than $350. On average, our savings were around 7%.
I always use VPNs.
Travel writer Brock Bloom, who caught up with us from Taiwan, says patience is key.
Does this work 100% of the time?
No, there are going to be people who use this and they don't see a change. It's either option 1, that website is not using dynamic pricing, or option 2, they are, but you're just choosing the wrong areas. You got to keep kind of bouncing around until you find the right server.
And Bloom says VPNs can help you get around all kinds of dynamic pricing to outsmart industry and get some savings satisfaction.
Airbnb uses it. Amazon uses it. Major League Baseball has used it. Ticketmaster uses it. So yeah, it's not just traveling that you can benefit by using VPN from.
For international travel, Bloom suggests picking a server that's close to your destination. And for domestic travel, try one that's near your airline's headquarters, or at least not near a major metro area. Go to SpotlightInvestigates.com for more tips from Kasoulis and Bloom. Plus, we'll give you the step-by-step on how to use a VPN to maximize your travel savings. For Spotlight on America, I'm Lisa Fletcher.
And we did reach out to some travel companies with our questions. Booking.com, for example, didn't respond. Expedia, however, told us that they would circle back in the future. Still waiting to hear from them. The National Desk team of reporters taking the pulse of America, and we start in Texas, where a new law is requiring a rating system for school library books.
School library catalogs have been something of a high-profile issue for Republicans, not just here in Texas, but across the country. Now, a new bill signed into law by Governor Greg Abbott appears to be a pretty unique approach for Texas. The question is, how will it work? It's probably no surprise that Texas, like many other Republican states, is implementing new policies to regulate school library catalogs.
It's the kind of graphic image that no one would publicize. And yet, we have books like that in our schools.
House Bill 900 takes effect September 1st, and while we'll likely start to see changes in the next school year, it likely will be fall 2024 when the next steps are implemented. Next April, school library book vendors will need to come up with their list of explicit materials in schools. That September, and every September thereafter, vendors will need to update that list with any changes.
They will be hard at work determining how to meet the requirements of those ratings to either rate a book as sexually relevant or sexually explicit.
Early June was an early introduction to the wildfire season along the East Coast. Wildfires in Canada socked in cities, creating unhealthy air conditions for millions of people for days.
I'm from the East Coast, and I never experienced that at home. I experienced it out here, and I was very surprised that they were getting that at home.
Agencies are warning as the climate changes, the threat of wildfires and spreading smoke is growing larger every year.
I've seen the images and it doesn't surprise me because it's dead dry.
The Washington Department of Health is urging people to prepare now. Air quality specialists are expecting higher than normal fire activity in Washington by July. Precipitation is predicted to be below normal through the fall, keeping conditions ripe for a longer fire season.
Dr. Garcia says people's circadian rhythm, which is your stress hormones, increase dramatically during those morning hours, likely leading to a higher risk of a heart attack. Transitioning from a weekend sleep schedule back to a work week sleep schedule also impacts your heart health. Garcia says heart attacks are seen widely across the board for people, but the most severe ones are seen in elderly males above the age of 60.
It's been a more concern lately, but it is something that we've known. We've known for a fact that more heart attacks are happening in the morning hours.
We are coming out of another weekend marked by violence. Multiple people killed, several others hurt in shootings all across the country. For example, in Willowbrook, Illinois, that's near Chicago, police there are looking for a suspect after one person was killed and at least 22 others hurt in a mass shooting at a Juneteenth celebration yesterday. Multiple weapons were fired into a crowd, and investigators have been interviewing victims, also looking through some surveillance video. In Kellogg, Idaho, a 31-year-old man is in custody after 4 people were shot and killed at a home on Father's Day. A neighbor is saying that the shooting followed an an ongoing dispute, and we're still waiting for more details about the victims, also a motive in that case. In central Pennsylvania, a state trooper there killed and another critically injured in separate encounters Saturday with the same shooter, who later killed himself. Police are still looking for a motive. In Quincy, Washington, 2 people there were killed, 3 others hurt, including the gunman, and during a music festival at a campground Saturday night. That shooter was arrested. In St. Louis, Missouri, a teen was killed and 9 others hurt yesterday in a mass shooting downtown. That investigation continues at this hour. And at least 25 more people were hurt in other mass shootings over the weekend in Southern California, Baltimore, San Francisco, and Philadelphia. Now, experts disagree why these incidents are increasing, some suggesting that it's driven by more guns, others point to less aggressive policing. Almost 2,000 nurses and clinicians are on strike right now in Portland, Oregon. Nurses joined picket lines outside multiple Providence Health facilities early this morning. The Oregon Nurses Association says the workers are looking for better pay, health care, sick time, and staffing.
We are asking for provisions in our contract to ensure that we are not working short on the floor, that we have enough nurses to provide excellent and safe care for our patients.
Providence says it has hired temporary nurses to fill its staff while those nurses are on strike.
You okay, buddy? Can you believe what happened to us?
Some incredible moments caught on police body camera in Florida. Take a look. A deputy was responding to a high water rescue when he and the man he was trying to save were sucked into a storm drain. The two were pulled underwater and came back up to 100 feet away. Both men say they're lucky to be alive. New tonight, we officially have our second named storm of the hurricane season. Forecasters saying Tropical Storm Brett has max sustained winds of 40 miles per hour. It is expected to become a hurricane by Wednesday. Now, the National Hurricane Center released this new storm path you see here in the last hour, and it's moving slowly right now. Tropical Storm Brett forecast to close in on Puerto Rico later this week. We'll, of course, be tracking any changes in the forecast for you. And in sports today, the PGA under some new pressure over its proposed merger with Saudi-backed Live Golf. In a new letter to the commissioner, 8-time major champ Tom Watson questioned whether the move is the only way to address issues on the tour. The merger is expected to come up again during tomorrow's meeting of the Player Advisory Council, but it could soon be brought up here at the U.S. Capitol. Just give you a live look here today. U.S. Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut saying over the weekend that a Senate hearing over the proposed merger could be just weeks away. And that does it for us today. Don't forget to join me tonight for the evening edition of the National Desk. You want to check your local listings for times. I'm Eugene Ramirez. Thanks for watching.